Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about the Bitcoin miner stocks plus Coinbase and how they're still pretty cheap and at really good buying points, in my opinion. So let's get it. So the first one that we're going to pull up here is BTBT. As you guys can see on the weekly, we are below the EMAs. We had a close down here, had a close here, then tried to retest and got rejected twice, actually. So we closed down here, got rejected, sold off, tried to come back up, retest, break out, failed again, and then got rejected and sold off back down below the EMAs here on basically last week. And as of right now, we're starting to kind of poke below the bottom of these candles here, which in my opinion is a very bearish sign. But of course, we have 2 days left in the trading week, so I have to keep an eye out on that as the week moves forward. So the current support zone still remains between $1.50 to $2 a share. That is the macro support zone. Could it go lower? Sure. I mean, the bottom here is at 53 cents, but this resistance turn support has held pretty strong over the last roughly about almost 2 years. So the MACD has had a death cross. As you can see, the histogram is moving down and it's turning more red, which indicates bearishness. As far as I'm concerned, I would say that now is as good a time as any to get in. I mean, if you got in now and you just average it down, I mean, your maximum drawdown to the bottom of the support's 35%. So maybe just kind of DCA in a little bit over time, not financial advice. Our average cost basis is still all the way up here at $3.50, but that's because we've been picking up HUD 8. If we had been buying this consistently every single day, obviously it would be much lower. But considering this is on a weekly time frame, and the last time we got down to these levels, it sat there for several months. I would say that we have plenty of time to buy more. So earnings for this stock is coming up also next month. That's something to keep in mind. So if you got in now and you held to resistance here, you get anywhere from a 72% to as high as potentially. Okay, let's remeasure this. I didn't realize that wick was that large. So 72% to potentially as high as 120%. So, I mean, you would more than double your money at this point. Now, if we were to remeasure this and say you managed to somehow get your cost basis to roughly about halfway in between this support zone, assuming it goes down there, you'd make as little as 130% and potentially as much as 165 to almost 200%. So nearly tripling your gains there if you manage to get that cost basis down there. So we'll move on to CIFR now. CIFR is also going to have earnings coming up here shortly. Although I don't think the earnings for the Bitcoin miner stocks is all that relevant right now because the halving's coming up and we all know that everything is going to go up with Bitcoin. So, but there is the earnings if you want to see that. So we're in the macro support zone. We are below the EMAs though, keep that in mind. So death cross on the MACD, histogram's turning red. But this support zone has been held for a very long time. So it's been over 2 years at this point. So the lowest you can go is roughly about 38 cents. Do I think it's going to get that low? Really, honestly, no, I don't. I think if it was going to get that low, it probably would have done so during this time frame. The only other thing I could think of that could send it that low is the Fed cutting rates and the yield curve uninverting, and the stock market dumping 30, 40, 50%, and crypto going down with it. That's pretty much the only scenario I could see in which this thing could dump that far down, but only time will tell, right? So doing the measurements here, and again, this is in macro support, so now is the perfect time to buy the stock, in my opinion, not financial advice. But if you were to buy it now, you get back up to this resistance zone here, anywhere from a 48 to a 57% gain. And the top resistance 100% to about 120%. So your current support on BTBT is between 225 to I would say about 270 a share. The resistance above that, actually, we can get rid of this because this was we're kind of trying to lay out some potential scenarios for options on this stock, which we'll talk about in the future if we actually execute that. But so resistance is basically between $5 all the way up to roughly about 560 a share. So if you guys don't know what the price is in the future, keep these zones in mind, and that should hopefully help out. So HUD 8 this is the next one that we do actually own, and yes, we do own these. We'll show you guys that in our buys, sells, and dividends when we post that later on this week or beginning of next week, something like that. So HUD 8 is within the support zone. Keep in mind, this is a major support zone. It's been holding for over a year and a half. The lowest that you could go down here is roughly about $4 a share. Do I think it's going to go that low? No, I don't. But it could happen. Just keep that in the back of your mind. It is possible. This is crypto after all. Crypto is very volatile, and you really never know what's going to happen. So death cross on the MACD, price moving down. We're in the support zone, but it's below the EMAs here. So the support zone is between $4 to about $8.80 a share. We're currently roughly around the middle of that. So if I was going to position trade, this is almost exactly where I would buy. And I would probably, if I was going to put a stop, I would put it probably somewhere below the bottom of this box. But, position traders, they generally don't use stop losses. So that's your support zone, and your resistance is between 17.30 to potentially as high as just shy of $23 a share. So from the current level, we're assuming you got in now to the bottom of this resistance zone, about 153% gain. And to the very tippy top is 237%. We'll just round it up, say 240%. So if you got an average cost of $7 a share, or even $6.70 a share, I mean, you're talking more than a 3x at this point. That's a pretty good return, if you ask me. That's just a short-term immediate return. If we were talking like long-term, obviously you can see this thing is just like ridiculous at this point. You're talking more than a 10x. So that's something to keep in mind for longer-term investors who want to hold this thing for the actual bull run itself. So before we go into the big Bitcoin miner stocks, we'll cover this one too. So this is Bitfarm or BITF. This one looks a little bit more bullish than the others, but still cheap compared to the resistance. So current support between $2 to $2.37. Macro support 38 cents to 90 cents. Do I think it's going to get back down there? No, I don't, because we got higher highs and higher lows here. It is above the EMAs. We have turned this current support zone from resistance into support now. So I would say that's overall bullish. No death cross yet on the MACD, and we are still above the break-even levels on the MACD and the RSI. Although you guys can see the histogram is coming down, indicating a potential reversal of momentum. So with that being said, let's go ahead and do the measurements. So from right now to the bottom of this resistance is a 33% gain to as high as potentially 60%. So not as good as CIFR, BTBT, and HUD 8. But if this is your thing, then there it is. Now the absolute bottom of support here at the 51-day exponential moving average would be $1.72. If you somehow manage to get it down there, which is pretty cheap, and held till the resistance zone, you get about 73% to as high as 108% gain. If I was going to do this, what I would do is I would be buying into HUD 8, BTBT, and CIFR, and then waiting for the price of BITF to come down, and basically just pick these three up and then wait for this to come down. And then once it does come down, that's when I would flip from buying these to buying this one, if I was going to play it like that. So RIOT, this is RIOT Platforms, not the biggest one. I believe Mara is bigger than RIOT, but we'll just take a look at these anyways. So pretty close to that support zone, not perfectly in it like back here during October, but pretty much as good a time to buy as any. So MACD is, it did have a death cross, but it's not below the break even. RSI is kind of in no man's land, so I would say that's kind of a mixed bag. Do with it what you will. But the current price is roughly about $11.30 a share. So Your most recent support zone, 866 to 1013. The macro support zone is between 355 to about, I'd say about 530 a share. I don't think it's going to go back down there, but we'll just have to wait and see. And your macro resistance is between roughly, I'd say about 1880 a share to as high as, we'll just say 2070. So if you manage to get in now, your maximum downside could be as much as 24%. So if I was going to do this, I would just simply DCA in. But in terms of the move up, you could be looking at as much as 67 to potentially 84%. Now, if you waited for it to get into this zone, now keep in mind there is no guarantee it's going to get into this zone. It's possible, but there's no guarantee. This thing could just as easily bounce straight off of the support zone and go right back up to resistance. That's possible. Keep that in mind. But if you manage to get in halfway in, you'd be looking at 97% to about 117% in gains. So here is Mara. This one's still looking quite bullish, but similar to RIOT. The MACD has not had a death cross, but the histogram is coming down. The EMAs are curling over. That's if we get a death cross, obviously the price could potentially come down. RSI is still bullish, although there was a death cross. So it's still pretty far away from this support zone. In my personal opinion, I would not be touching this one with a 10-foot pole, honestly, because the price, in my opinion, is just too expensive. I'd want to see it come back down somewhere in the zone, at least to maybe around $10 or $11 a share before I bought this. But the most relevant support zone is between 730 to about 1230 a share. Your current resistance, which is where we're at right now, 1830 to 2019, and then the macro, the next level resistance would be 29 to 33-ish dollars a share. So if you got it now, immediate returns could be anywhere from 15 to 27%, and then obviously if we move higher, it's 82 to as high as the top of this wick, which is about 97%. But if you waited to get into this support box down here, it changes a lot. So you get 89 to 107%, and then all the way up here, 202% to roughly about 225%. So you can see there's a huge difference here. You'd be taking a look at potentially as much as a 3x. Now, why do I say I wouldn't be getting into this one? Well, as a trader, basically what I'm seeing here is it went above this resistance zone, failed to hold its support. Now we're back down below the resistance zone, which means it did not flip into support. And it's retesting and not getting back above the resistance. The sellers are selling this thing back down, and the buyers are failing to push it back above resistance. So in my mind, that immediately spells out that it's bearish. Now it is still above the EMAs, so basically we're pretty much stuck between the EMAs, the buyers trying to hold the EMAs, and the sellers trying to sell back down below this resistance, which they've been successful at. And we're also potentially about to have a death cross. This is exactly why I say I would not touch this one right now. You guys can do what you want. We've given you support and resistance. That's entirely up to you. So Coinbase, this is the added bonus. As you guys can see, still looking very bullish. Resistance flipped into support. The support is still holding. The EMAs are at or above support, although we did have a death cross. Keep that in mind. And the death cross is way, way up here, which is generally speaking, if there's going to be a sharp sell-off, you would want to see the MACD much higher than the break-even level. Like something right here would not have been as bearish as something right here having a death cross. So we had a death cross on the RSI. We came back down from being overbought. The only real saving grace for the bulls here is that we're above support and still above the EMAs, but that could change, obviously. We'll just have to wait and see. So if you get in now, the potential immediate return would be anywhere from about 24% to 43%. Now, the next support, or sorry, not support, the next resistance zone that we're going to look at here is way up there. We'll cover what those are in a minute. So 73% to as high as roughly about 89%. So the immediate support box is between 105 to 114. I would say probably as low as 102 to about 114. I say that because even if it does hold the support zone, it could wick down and touch that red EMA. So keep that in mind. The immediate resistance is between 151 to 173. And the higher resistance is 210 to as high as roughly about $230 a share. And as you guys can see, this used to be support back during the bull run, and then it came back up, got slammed down, tried to come back up and retest, flipped from support to resistance, and then we sold off. So that's why that resistance zone is all the way up there. So anyways, this is the Bitcoin Miner Stocks plus Bitcoin. Hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.